All right, today we have Stephen Iglesias. He's joined us to talk about AI and revolutionizing education. Stephen, do you want to give a little background on how you got involved with this?
Sure, absolutely. So, I got into education by accident. I started in 2009. My best friend and I owned the baseball academy, and about 3 days before school starts, he calls me and tells me, "Hey, the school I just got the head coaching job at, Doral Academy, they're looking for a golf coach. Why don't you come coach baseball with me and you can coach golf?" And I say, "Yeah, I think I could do that." And so, like 3 months into the role, they didn't have a teaching position 3 days before school started, so they hired me as a baseball coach and a security guard. And my boss at the time, which he's the principal of the school now, tells me, "Hey, you seem to have a little bit of common sense. Why don't you think about becoming an administrator?" And I said, "You know what? I kind of like doing this. Let me give that some thought." And so, to make a long story short, I got into the classroom a few years later, teaching pretty much every loose odd course that they needed me to teach. And then 4 years after that, I became an administrator, head of discipline, head of operations, a lot of the grunt work, head of security. Lastly, I was doing the head of the facilities. And right around 2018, I got really bored. I wanted to get out of education. Um, I was reading a book by Peter Diamandis at the time called Bold, and it's talking about everything about the future. It's talking about AI. It's talking about biomedical engineering, how we're going to live longer. It's talking about aerial taxing, and I'm like, like kids need to learn about this stuff. And so if you ask anybody in the K-12 space what technology is, 9 out of 10 times they're going to tell you it's robotics. And so I went to my first robotics competition. I came back and I said, this is really really cool. But instead of just teaching kids how to play games, what if we can teach them how to think about using technology to actually solve a real world problem? And that kind of became the crux around everything that we started doing in our school, in exposing these kids to everything that was happening in the real world, whether it be in robotics, then computer science, biomedical engineering, cybersecurity, and then programs in AI. There was a stat right around that time that came out that said over 80% of the jobs these kids are going to have in the next 10 years, they don't even exist today. And so in my mind, it was like, what are we doing to prepare these kids? And I think, for the most part, for the last 50 years, I think STEM has been a career path that has been promoted, pretty heavily in this country. I think where we've gone wrong is like we try to teach kids how to play baseball from a book instead of build learning environments and spaces where these kids can actually learn hands on. And so that kind of became my mission and focus, to bring in not only these learning spaces, but bring in the mindsets to connect these students to the skills that they'll need for the real world.
How
Perfect.
do on your X account you describe yourself as educational disruptor? What do you mean by that, or how do you
So,
define that?
a lot of folks think that what we're doing in the schools that we're doing is pretty innovational. Um, I don't really view it like that. I just think it's different. And the reason why it's different is because I just take kind of copy paste. I take a look at what's happening in the real world and bring it down to the student's level. That kind of framework doesn't really fit within our educational models today. I think for the most part, as educators for the last 40, 50 years, we've been really pushing kids from K-12 into college. And that's really been the sole pathway and mindset, pushing kids to college and then letting them figure it out when they get there. And I think that's totally backwards. I think we everything's happening so quickly in the real world, in the workforce today, that we need to expose these kids at a much sooner age, not only to so that they understand these technologies, but to inspire them. I mean, if you look at I was listening to a podcast with Palmer Luckey, and he's talking with Peter Diamandis, and they're talking about the future. And he's like, we always tell our kids they gotta follow their passions and follow their dreams. But what if today they have really crappy passions? And 60 Minutes did a study in this country and found that over 70% of kids ages 14 and under, they want to be TikTokers and YouTubers. They took this same study in China, and over 70% of them want to be engineers, want to be entrepreneurs, want to be scientists, folks that are really bringing value to society. So from an educational standpoint, I think we need to kind of create and simulate environments that mimic the real world.
Right on. Do you have any like specific like aspects of traditional education system that you see as outdated and would like to see evolve specifically?
Sure. So, at Doral Academy, we were known for being a very prestigious college prep school. Um, right around 2010, we started shipping out kids to the top universities across the country, the MITs, Harvard, Stanford, Yales. Um, and we became really, really good at producing those students. I remember 3 years ago, we had three kids get into the same graduating class from the same graduating class get into MIT. We had three of those students that actually, got in, which is kind of pretty impressive. Um, but one of the stories I always tell is that we had a student, and that student in sixth grade, from the moment he walked through those doors, everybody knew that that student wanted to be in technology. He took courses in middle school in robotics and coding and programming, but by the time he got into high school, since his goal was to get into Stanford, um, he really couldn't afford to take any technology courses, whether it was an AI course, cybersecurity course, or a robotics course. He was not able to take those, and the reason is because he was so busy packing his schedule with as many AP classes as possible, that he just didn't have room in his schedule to take those courses. Every class he pretty much had the AP attachment to it. This student took 19 AP classes in his 4 years of high school and got fives on every single
Jeez.
exam. The kid graduates top of his
Man.
class. He goes to Stanford, graduates top of his class, gets an internship at Stripe, and at 24 years old gets a job leading one of the AI and fraud departments for Stripe. Now, if you were to ask me, that's a
Jeez.
success story, but I really believe we hindered that student. And the reason is because how much better would he have been had he been able to tinker and be part of cybersecurity classes, AI classes throughout his 4 years? But our system kind of pushes that off until he gets into the university to be able to dabble in these things. So as far as like your traditional schooling system, I think it just promotes, it doesn't promote for students to see these courses in these technology fields early enough.
Oh, right on. Like so, like in a post-factory world, that's robot-driven economy. What are the key skills you expect students to need to thrive in that future or the now?
So this is a really tough question because you know uh, over 80% of the jobs they're going to have, they don't exist today. So how do we know what to prepare them for? But what we do
Uh,
know is that they do need to be able to think computationally. They need to be familiar digitally, around digital skills and awareness. They need to think critically, and they need to find problems that they want to solve and how to use technology to solve those problems first. Um, for the most part, the soft skills is not something that schools really harp on, and I believe as things become more automated, how they become more robotic. um, I think that is going to be our single value proposition as humans. And so, you know i- to prepare them for that world, these are not things that they're going to learn from a book. We have to really curate our experiences where they're getting these skills, these human skills, as a byproduct. Being able to communicate, being able to project manage, being able to lead a team. These are all skill sets that companies are saying right now, we're getting these kids and we're having to train them in these things. These are basic things that they're not coming to us with. And so I think it's crucially important, in building these programs where they are getting these skills.
right on. Do you how do you think AI integrations transform your approach to education specifically?
So, when ChatGPT first came out, most states started to ban it, and it's out of the hat. It's not going to go back in. Companies are spending billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars, to make this happen in the workforce today. Um, and so as time has gone on, a lot of states are now kind of opening the floodgates, and you're seeing more educational technology products around AI and AI in the classroom. One of the mistakes I think we're making is we're teaching teachers how to use tools. And most of the PD that's happening in schools today is a teacher that leads that PD that shows other teachers how they use ChatGPT. And so here are some of the prompts that we use, and this is how we use it in the classroom today. Well, the problem with that thinking is that I think these tools in the next 6 months to a year are going to change, and so we're going to be constantly being in that cycle of development, and it's going to burn teachers out. I mean, if you think about what an educator's had to become in the last 5 years alone, I mean, it's eye opening. I mean, we've had to become Secret Service agents, we've had to become sanitation specialists, we've had to become contact tracers, mental health experts, and now AI experts as well. And this is all happening so quickly that I think we really need to help AI leaders in education around AI curate the frameworks and the mind shifts needed, so that when these tools do adapt, they're able to pivot and build them and bake them within the culture of their school. At this point, I don't think we can allow for states and schools to not be teaching these key things in AI. I mean, there's one stat that totally blew my mind out there that I heard this weekend that says 1 in 5 kids in high school today have reported having an emotional relationship with a large language model. This is something like
Right.
everybody needs to be talking about. And I totally agree. It needs to be done ethically, it needs to be done responsibly, but we can't wait for the perfect uh, uh, strategy to bring this into our schools anymore.
Do you have any idea where America is on the list compared to other countries in terms of this? Like, are
Uh,
we
I, I
falling way behind, or
I don't know exactly where we are. I don't know that key statistics, but I know that China has already mandated from K through 12. This year they're starting AI education for their students. And I think our administration has moved forward and has done the presidential AI challenge to get kids inspired and get them thinking about how they can use AI to solve a real world problem. So I think that's a very positive thing. But we just need more schools and more leaders to go out in front and start creating and building with this.
you feel like this learning AI or teaching AI is more of a personalized approach, right? Or do you feel like it can be taught universally to the whole class as just one certain way?
Sure. So I think we're looking at this. This needs to be looked at in two buckets. Typically, for the most part, anything in technology has always been given to the computer science kids. But the reality is that AI is affecting everyone. It's changing the way we operate as a society in the workforce. There needs to be a AI literacy education around this is how everyone can use not only these tools but be aware of the dangers that these and problems that these AI models, language models can cause. And then there's the second bucket, which is for the developers, right? This is where we do a deep dive of this is what language models are, this is what regression models are, and these are the tools that we need to use to develop using artificial intelligence. We speak about AI. The way I express it is we speak about AI as like this all-encompassing umbrella, and that's like you giving a conversation of like you play sports, like
Right.
what sport do you play? There's many sports. Well, there are many forms of AI, and there's different things that AI is good for in this bucket or this category, and we need to teach kids to distinguish that.
Right on. Do you have any like real major concerns that jump out to you with AI that you worry about or
I mean,
fear?
there's a lot, but one of the main ones when it comes to education, particularly, is um, that we're not right now the way we're using AI, we're using it in the same framework of our current educational system, of our current educational model and framework. AI has the potential and the power to upend that whole model and create a new model. And so we need innovators on the frontiers leading those forward. So when you worry about kids using AI and just using it to do busy work, to do their homework, where they just give me the answer for that, and it's not causing them to think, then that's when we have a big problem. And so, as educators, we need to create experiences for these students where they're not bypassing those critical skills that they need to be able to think critically, to be able to think computationally. And so, we need to bake these experiences where they're still gaining those skills, um, and we're paving the way forward. The other, I
Like
think
when you
the
see
other
like the
I think the
go
other,
ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off there, but I think the other thing is that we look at this ethically and responsibly. There's a lot of biases in these LLMs, and we need to teach more folks, different folks out there that can come in and put their perspective into, so that we get to all students and all learners.
Right on. Just for like like just like your average factory worker out there, like when you see the headlines like Amazon's laying off people, going to replace them with robots or whatever, does that cause concern for you, or do you feel like it's just going to open up jobs in other areas?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I kind of relate this back to, when the ATMs were coming out in the 1980s. Everybody thought the ATM was gonna displace all bank tellers, and that job was completely obsolete. Well, it actually did the opposite. The opposite. It created more bank teller roles because they needed more locations to put these ATM machines inside of. And so I think it's gonna have the same effect. Yeah, there's going to be some jobs that are going to be completely wiped out. Anything that's thinkless, anything that's pattern recognition, anything that can be done by these AI models, which is exactly that, is what's going to get wiped out. But then it's going to create a whole new set of jobs. Um, uh, uh, a lot, typically a lot more jobs will be created because of this.
Right on. You don't fear like the ultimate end of the world scenario at all, like AI takes over and tries to kill us all? That's not a priority on your list or anything?
I mean, I think there's a lot of hype around AI and a lot of fear-based, people talking about that out there. And I think that just goes back to the education piece. If you know and understand what AI is, um, you know that really can't happen. At the end of the day, it's a program that's following a set of instructions. It's recognizing patterns faster than any patterns that we can recognize as humans. And one of my fears is in education is that our model is still measuring and preparing kids to do things that computers already do better than us, which is regurgitate information and find patterns. I think we need to create and develop a new definition for what intelligence is. There's machine intelligence and then there's human intelligences, and those intelligences are going to be our value prop moving forward for humanity.
Are you at all concerned that like all these AI YouTube videos and all this is going to cause limitations or banning, if you will, on AI, which is going to be negative effect for what you're trying to do?
Um, that's kind of hard to say. I'm actually more fearful of the fact that AI is recursive, so it's learning upon itself, right? And so if no new data continues to pour in and it's just learning on data that it was generated by itself, there's going to be no new output ever generated.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the history of like innovation, right, and you plot it on a graph, on a linear graph, everything is pretty linear. As okay, well, that was the next logical step, but we're going to miss out on Einstein's theory of relativity, that's plotted way up here. That completely came out of nowhere, out of just creativity. If we only rely on AI to generate knowledge, that is what I'm most fearful of. That no new knowledge is going to be generated.
Right on. Um, how do you envision the classroom of the future? Can you describe that? Like what you see the classroom looking like?
So I don't really I don't think there's a good answer to that, because I think it's going to be everywhere and everything, and that's to your unique student. You know, today the model is one size fits all. In ninth grade, you need to be reading at this level because this is where everybody is reading at this level, and this is where you should be. And what school works on now is getting you up to that reading level. So the kids that are at the very bottom and at the very top kind of get left out of this. AI has the power and potential to completely disrupt that and make it 100% individual. There's already tools out there to help you do that. I mean, just in Notebook LM, and Google just came out with Learn My Way, where you put in a topic that you want to learn about, let's say something in physics, and then it takes your interests, and your interest is football and singing, and it'll generate lessons about physics geared towards kind of your likes and interests, and it'll generate that physics lessons based on concepts of football and singing. So I think for the most part of history, uh, we've been the gatekeepers of information, and you basically had to go to school because that's where the books were. Today, information is everywhere, and so as educators, we got to stop thinking we're that, and make it about what are the experiences that we can create for these students that they couldn't get anywhere else. So what are the rooms, the experiences that we're providing for them, the equipment that we're providing for them, that they really couldn't get anywhere else. And so to me, I think the future of school is these buildings that have these unbelievable rooms and environments that simulate the real world, so when the student gets out of that school and ready for the real world, they would have already done it.
Yeah. That would probably really help. I think that's an interesting concept, gearing education around your interests, because that's the main thing, right? You got to keep them interested to learn and focus.
I mean, just think about how I learned from 2017, 2018, when I got into all this whole world of tech, and really didn't know anything about it prior. I was actually pushed away from tech when I was in middle school and high school because I didn't have the right math course. But really found the passion, and really found that I really enjoy learning about this stuff, and just the amount of information and books and videos that I've been able to go through just because I like it.
Right. Do you is part of your work is you're ultimately trying to shift the mindset of the administrators and the teachers, right? How are you trying to do that?
So
Or what approach are you taking?
so I think, in education, you have these unbelievable leaders, and they know how to educate kids. They've done very successfully for a very long time. On this side of the equation, you have these, unbelievable ed tech software engineers that are building these unbelievable products. They understand the tech, but they don't understand the classroom. And so there's this kind of gap that's created between the two. I'm hoping that I'm able to help bridge that gap, by showing these programs off, and showing that not only that the educational leaders can handle this stuff, but the kids want it. I think one of my ex posts earlier last week was about the enrollment problem, and the tuition problem, right? Where students aren't coming to school because they don't find the relevance in actually being in school. When you provide the relevance and you provide places for them to have agency, enrollment's not an issue.
Right, I hear you. Have you ever looked at the difference, like between traditional school classroom setting and online learning? Is there a big gap in that, or is it about the same? Do you have any idea?
I mean, I think it just depends on the student.
Right on.
For the most part, your public school educational system makes you be in a physical classroom a certain amount of hours, for you to get credit for that course. And so what started happening is after COVID, um, you started seeing most parents start homeschooling because they gave that flexibility where maybe you were a professional gym wanted to be aspired to be a professional gymnast and you couldn't do it because you had to be in school, and there was a whole disconnect there with students and being able to attend school. So what it did was it just gave more options, and there's more
Right.
innovative schools out there that are trying different things, because they see that the world is actually changing. I mean, I honestly, I really do get upset when educators say, "Oh, but how is he supposed to learn if he's not in class?" What are you trying to
Right.
say, that the information's only within those four walls? I mean, I can go learn how to code in Python on YouTube, right? And
Right.
so again,
Yeah.
it goes back to you making the experience so unique and you making the experience so fruitful for these students that they don't want to miss school.
Right. Do you have any advice you'd give to parents, or tips, on how they can support their children's education in this supporting or in this evolving landscape?
Yeah, I think early on it's about exposure. It's about exposing to them to as many unique experiences and industries and topics as possible. AI fluency and AI literacy is the most important thing moving forward. If there's any way of doing things with them at home and getting them in front of with these tools, to help them learn. Again, you're not going to learn how to do these things from a book. You're going to have to get hands on with them and try and play. When I give PDs with teachers, one of the first things I tell them when talking about these different language models and which ones to use it, I tell them, try not to use it for your classroom. Try to start implementing it for your regular day, right? On creating menus for you to cook for the week. Creating gym schedules and workout plans and those types of things, so you can ease into these things, right? Because it is daunting, it is scary, it is fearful, um, but you're not gonna really go to a course, or you're not gonna really learn this from a book. You got to get really hands on, and then that's where, once you understand how it operates, that's where the creativity comes in.
If you had like a magic wand, right, and you could just wave it and change one thing in the educational system overnight, do you have anything you would do that with?
So I mean, I think, to start, what schools measure. Um, Again, we're measuring. We're in K-12. We're measuring what kids can regurgitate. We're measuring what pattern recognition they can find. We're measuring, them in an environment for them to compete to get into college. Um, and our world doesn't need that anymore. Our world needs dynamic students that can think critically, that can solve problems that they want to solve for themselves, that they find important for themselves in the world moving forward. And if you sit down and talk to these kids, they care. They care about the environment. They care about their future with AI and work, and just help them find those things that they're passionate about, and their strengths, to help prepare them for the real world.
You posted recently something about some of your students winning something to do with like a coral reef project, right?
Yeah, so there
Can
was a student, at Matterbrickle Academy, that this student last year as a junior had pretty much created a 70 or 80 page research paper on how he's using math, calculus and geometry to really instill an abundant life, a diverse life of different creatures in those reefs and restoring the coral reefs. So this year, when I got to Brickle, I've made it one of my missions to help him research and publish that research in the way that it needs to get it out there. These kids are doing remarkable things. We just need to expose them to that, and that's not part of our traditional educational model. Those are the things and the facts that we need to highlight.
What would you say the most exciting thing about AI is to you?
It's a great question. I think number one is that it augments us. Um, doing the tedious things, or like Microsoft calls the drudgery, for even for teachers, right? There's lots of things that teachers don't have time to do because they're too busy crossing their T's and dotting their I's. These are things that they can help us with so that we can get back to doing what we need to be doing, which is educating students, inspiring students, and helping them find their way. um, I think that's kind of like what I look forward to the most, and then the creativity behind it. Like, how creative can you put? One of my mentors always told me that the definition of innovation is really not doing something completely brand new. It's taking something from here, taking something from here, in two places that are totally unrelated, and putting it together. And so the students that have a kind of like a wide range of experiences are going to be able to use their creativity to build something to solve a problem that they want to solve.
Do you have any really cool projects or anything that's coming up that you want to talk about?
Sure. So there's a couple. Number one, probably the food lab. The food lab is a student-driven storefront within one of our schools, and it's 100% student-driven. They do the market research, they find the products, they source the with the vendors, they find the products that the students want to have within the cafeteria, milkshakes and coffees and empanadas and all sorts of different things, and nuts to bolts, they sell everything. That's
Okay.
what I'm talking about, learning by doing. The MBA, some folks out there say it's one of the most wasted degrees at the university level, versus going out and starting a business and learning, hands on. um, the doing that for these kids is so advantageous because they're doing it in a simulated environment that's safe for them. That program is actually profitable for the school. So that's a really unique project. I think the other thing that I'm kind of working on is the AI Mindset Institute. I'm working on that with some colleagues. I think there's Dr. Michael Connor and Cecilia Aguilar. One of the things we noticed when we went to FETC this past year, this year in January, um, over 70% of the companies that are at the vendors, the edtech vendors that were at this conference, they all had an AI driven product, or they were an AI driven company. And I put my administrator hat on, and I'm like, where do I even start? How do I even digest all of this? And so I see a lot of focus of AI in the classroom and AI for the students, but who's focusing on the mindset for the leaders? And so and the way we talk about it is just like we developed a growth mindset. How do we develop an AI mindset? And that's a whole new mindset shift. It's a whole new set of frameworks that we need to look at AI and have like almost like a filter, right, to bring these products into our school and use it to build a culture of innovation within our schools.
Do you want to tell people how they can find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, you
You
can
just
find
have
me
an
on
X, or do you have like
Yeah, you can find me on X, Stevo2113. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Steven Iglesias. And I recently started a Substack, so you can find me some of my articles on there. One of my latest ones I talk about. It's like a checklist for parents. of that they can use to see the three things that schools should be doing, which is providing agency, relevancy, and resilience. Relevance, agency, and resilience. And if it talks about what those things look like for schools, and that's how they can tell if their schools are helping their children be future ready.
If you had to guess off the top of your head, how many schools do you think are actually future ready today?
There's quite a few out there. They're just in silos. There's a national consortium of STEM schools. I think a lot of those schools that are focused on STEM are doing some great things. And because the reality is that those programs, they give you those byproducts. They give you not only the technical skills within a robotics program or a biomedical engineering program, but they also provide you with the auxiliary skills that you need: the communication, the project management, the working in teams, the meeting deadlines. Those are the things that these programs provide. So there's quite a few that are doing some great things out there. We just need to kind of band together and highlight what those schools are doing.
Right on. Well, Stephen, I know you're I don't know where you are located, California, right?
Miami.
Or am I wrong? Miami. That's right.
Miami.
So you're ahead of me in time.
Yeah.
I'll just ask you one more last question, and that is, if do you have any real main message you're trying to get out there that you want to share?
Um, you know, to be future ready, we just need to like mimic the real world. Look at what's happening out in the real world. Look at these technologies. Look at how the world is shifting, and bring that same content and make it relevant in schools. We need to teach kids how to think. We need to teach kids how to do, and we need to stop measuring them on what they know, and make them do. And ultimately, that's going to make them resilient. If they can't move into a world where we don't know what it's going to look like and just fail forward, we're going to have a hard time.
Well, Stephen, I appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I know that there's probably at least 4 to 5 other YouTube videos that I've seen you talk about this in, and they were pretty interesting. So I would suggest people check those out too. But I appreciate you coming on and taking time out of your schedule.
I appreciate you having me on, and these conversations are great because more and more of them need to be had for sure, for us to be able to give these kids a chance.
Right on, Stephen. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thanks.